Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound, and I'm really happy to be joined today by Kyle Snar, head of partnerships at Worn and Wound. Kyle, how's it going?
Doing well, just recovering from the big weekend.
Yeah, so that's what we're here to talk about. This is we're recording this just a few days, the Tuesday, in fact, following the completion of the biggest watch fair in the world, Windup Watch Fair, New York City, 2024. It was a really fun weekend. Kyle, it was great to see you there, and the whole team. Just a crazy experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even tell you how thrilled I still am about how it all went. I think it exceeded all of our expectations on a lot of levels. And man, the feedback has been so far so great.
Yeah, yeah. Everything that I heard at the show and kind of like in my Instagram DMs, like afterwards, it's just been just tons of positive feedback. People really seem to enjoy themselves, and yeah, it's just so much fun. I'm exhausted. I'm sure you are too. So it was a lot of work. It takes a few days, I think, at least, to recover from one of these.
Yeah, I am feeling it. My batteries still are getting recharged at this moment, but glad to be talking to you and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So this the main portion of this podcast is a conversation between myself and Rolf Studer, the co-CEO at Oris, who is of course, one of the sponsors of Windup, a mainstay at Windup for years now. Oris had a big new release, which we'll talk about. But before we get into that conversation and kind of transition into that recording live from Windup, I thought it'd be great to kind of bring Kyle on just to sort of like talk about our experiences and some of our favorite things that we saw at the show. Before we get to that, let's do a quick wrist check. Kyle, what are you wearing?
Yeah, this is purely coincidental, and you just asked me a few minutes ago if I could jump on with you, but I am actually wearing my Oris today.
Great.
Like, go figure. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I am wearing my Oris Diver 65. It actually was the one that they made as a limited edition with Hodinky with that really beautiful gray green matte dial. No date, very symmetrical dial, and it's just one of those kind of everyday can do anything, go anywhere watches, and the sunlight really makes that either like a bright kind of army green or a really cool gray color. So I just happen to be wearing it today.
Yeah, that's a really cool piece. Very fortuitous, of course, that you're that
Yeah.
you're wearing it. I'm wearing a new pickup actually from the Wind Up Watch Fair in New York City. I'm wearing my Christopher Ward Belcanto in the Dragonfly Blue colorway. I didn't go to Wind Up expecting to buy a bel canto. I didn't expect that they would have any there to sell. But I saw Blake Mallon picked one up, and he brought one back to our kind of like like sponsored staff lounge area during like a brief break in the action. And I thought, oh man, I could walk away from the show with one of these. Because I've wanted a bel canto for a while, and to have one available to purchase without having to wait 5, 6, 7 months or whatever the lead time is kind of a rare opportunity. So I decided to pick one up, and I'm really glad I did. It's a beautiful colorway and just like an incredibly cool watch. I love this thing.
Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, that one was definitely a bit of a scene stealer, at the show. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, I'm really really pleased with it. So Kyle, obviously 140 plus brands
Yeah,
of
yeah.
all kinds, watch brands, EDC brands, and the like at Windup this year. I know it's impossible to just like pick a favorite, or to it's really tough. But maybe something that like surprised you,
Sure.
or that really kind of like grabbed your attention in an unexpected way at Windup this year that you weren't expecting.
Sure. Can I mention three items? Is
Of
that
course,
okay
yeah,
with you?
yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, one thing that was really cool, I felt like Shinola was there for the first time as a lead sponsor, and they had this section kind of on the main floor towards the south end, their 37th Ave, and they kind of brought in a lot of fixtures from their actual boutique in Tribeca, and kind of
Hmm.
really outfitted it like a lounge area for folks to kind of come in and sit back and relax and learn about not just the watches that they create, but a lot of other products they create as well. So that I thought that was just a really cool, inviting sort of moment, which was cool.
Yeah, for sure.
We also had an area that was like a little bit of like a hallway from the the set Oris setup into the main lounge, excuse me, the main hall upstairs, and we turned that room into a 50th anniversary timeline celebration of Casio, and it was amazing because people would walk in and literally have like a little bit of a wow factor moment, which was really cool to see that expression on people's faces if you just lurked there for a little bit and see
Hmm.
people's reaction. That was pretty amazing. And then for me, the kind of the cool, fun, standout little brand of Windup was actually in our EDC Expo section. Um, a local Brooklyn-based brand called CW&T was
Hmm.
there, and that team is just an amazing set of really cool industrial designers who have a really unique and fun and clever way of bringing their ideas to life in terms of EDC and timepieces. So they had their kind of, I guess, somewhat well known Casio resin encased watches there, kind of like a Han Solo and carbonite sort of thing going on, where these watches kind of locked and frozen in there and just kind of tick till they don't tick. Well, I guess tick's the wrong word. It's a digital watch, so it just kind of,
Yeah, it doesn't actually tick. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of goes through the paces until it exists no more. Kind of an interesting little, I think art experiment reminding
Hmm.
us of at some point all of this, all of us hit the end of the road. I think
Yeah.
this is really
Indeed, we do.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a really cool brand. I got to meeting them and kind of talking to them and hearing their perspective on industrial design was really cool. Plus, they had a really cool limited edition wind up pen that we didn't even know they were going to bring. They made like a small handful of them, and I was able to pick one of those up. So that was fun.
Yeah, they're a really cool brand. We did they make a tape dispenser. I don't know if they had it at their table, but we wrote about it for Watch Stores and Gear a few months ago. I can put the links in the show notes. They just have this like really like kind of fun, ingenious way of like rethinking like common everyday objects. That's like
That's cool.
really refreshing. They're just super fun.
What stood out to you, Zach?
Obviously there's so many like cool brands, at Windup. I really tried to spend some time with a lot of the like the new brands who are making their
Yeah.
Windup debut. I was very impressed with I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. I apologize in advance. Bada and Magnum.
Magnum.
They're yeah, they're very very impressive. I met with them a few years ago in Geneva during Watches and Wonders Week, and was just like blown away by kind of like the ingenuity of their designs, very avant-garde, like just like incredibly cool, unique stuff. There's nothing else remotely like those watches at Windup. They made their debut this year.
Correct. Yeah, we actually had 54 brands that were new to Windup that had never gone to not just New York, but any of the Windups before. And many of those, it was actually their first time in the United States ever,
Yeah,
which was
yeah.
cool.
Kuo, another brand from Japan, coming all the way from Japan for their I believe it was their first show of any kind,
Correct. Yep.
as well. Those watches are incredibly cool. They seem to have a very good reception. They had like little sold out signs, kind of like marked on all their watches. So it seems like people were buying them. They couldn't keep anything in stock, so that's good for them. I also similar to you, I want to just kind of highlight the space, like the Center 415, the venue this year, which is like absolutely incredible. The way that I mean, credit to you and to Nelly and your team for kind of like putting things together. The ingenious ways that you guys kind of like made use of this labyrinthine space was just like really really amazing. It's really like an experiential kind of fair. Like you're literally led down a path, from one brand to another, and it kind of culminates in this like huge room filled with just like uh, dozens and dozens of brands. And it just dawned on me that like that main room on the second floor, that must be like two Chelsea markets worth of brands in there. It's
I
just
think
crazy.
more than that. Actually, I think we had a total, including our lead sponsors, of like 97 brands on the upper level, which is just, it's almost three like Chelsea markets,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when you make that turn from like the Casio exhibit that you were describing into that main hall, it's just like it's just very dramatic, like I don't know what else to say about it. It's just like just such a cool kind of like experience to go through that. It was
I
it was
appreciate
crazy.
that. Yeah, there's some MC Escher kind of moments in there. Sometimes you get spun around and you don't know if you're going up or down, but
Yeah.
it was a perfect venue for this. And I feel like it just really being on Fifth Avenue, just a couple blocks north of Empire State Building, just really made it feel, epic and iconic, and in a way that, I think we always envisioned for this fair, but really felt like defined and cemented this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was I mean, like the New York show is kind of always sort of like the um
The
I don't know
flagship.
how to describe it. It's like it's the hometown show for Warren
Yeah,
and Wound.
yeah.
It's a New York company, and so it makes sense that that show is kind of like always the most ambitious and biggest of the ones that we put on, and it really didn't let down this year. It was great.
No, I appreciate that. Well, awesome. Yeah, yeah. I think that we learned a lot also. I think that being the first time in a venue, you just, you kind of learn its ins and outs and kind of have, dozens of ideas of how to improve it in the future. But we
Hmm.
definitely really enjoyed being in that venue this year for sure.
Yeah, no, it was great. So let's move into Oris before we transition into the
Yeah,
conversation I had with Rolf. We should mention that Oris took the opportunity to introduce a brand new watch at Windup Watch Fair this year on really the moment the show opened on Friday afternoon. It's a new Oris Diver's Date, kind of an updated take on the Diver 65. Did you get a chance to check this watch out,
I
Kyle?
did. I did. Yeah. And I was really fortunate to be aware of it ahead of time and help them build up to that moment. And we can't, thank them enough for choosing the first day of Windup to be the moment that they unveiled it to the entire world. I think that just really goes to show how powerful of a platform Windup is becoming to the watch community at large. And so yeah, I just a big thanks to DJ and Josh for choosing this moment to be the spot and the time to make this big announcement, because I think all of us as enthusiasts love the Diver 65. As I said, I just grabbed mine today,
Hmm.
but I feel like they are really taking steps to continue the evolution of that platform. And obviously it's not a revolution, but a truly an evolution of that platform, but in ways that I think all of us as enthusiasts will just enjoy and really kind of see as the right steps in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a subtle kind of like refinement of an idea that's been around now for for quite some time. Rolf and I talk about the introduction of the Diver 65, almost 10 years ago, and how that kind of like landed at just the right time in the enthusiast kind of watch world, with as vintage reissues were kind of like gaining steam, and is truly like a really important watch for Oris in a lot of ways, and kind of like expanding their reach and their audience. And I think the new piece is, kind of like a good reflection of what Oris is all about. These like kind of subtle refinements. They did a similar thing with the Aquas earlier this year.
Yep.
Kind of like not when they decide to like redo something, they don't like start from scratch. They know they have something that's good, that's worth kind of like refining subtly, and that's what the updates to the Aquas and I think the Oris Divers Date that was just released kind of represent, at least to me, and that's something else that Rolf and I talk about. Before we switch it over to that conversation, any final thoughts, Kyle, on Wind Up New York City?
I just want to thank everyone who came. I mean, we had, I think, we're still kind of getting the tallies and stuff. We're not a we're a free and open to the public event. And so we don't have registration. We don't stop anyone at the door and get your name and email address or anything like that. And so we're still getting like the numbers in, but we know for a fact that this for us was the largest event we've ever thrown.
Hmm.
And we can't thank folks enough for coming and checking it out. And again, big thanks to all of our lead sponsors, especially Oris, who again also, took the opportunity to really brand their space and experiment with beautiful graphics that really push their brand in some exciting direction. And we got to be the blank canvas for them to do that. And it's just those types of moments that feel incredibly satisfying, after a long weekend and then months and months and months of preparation ahead of it.
Months and months and months of preparation. That means, of course, we're right back to the drawing board with windups for 2025.
Oh
Hard to
boy.
believe. I hope you can get some rest before you really start to plan for next year, because I know what
Yeah.
a massive undertaking it is. But yeah, I echo your sentiment. I want to also just thank everyone who came out to the show, everyone I had a conversation with and said hello to me over the course of the weekend, and of course all our sponsor brands, for participating. It was just so great to catch up with so many of you. And yeah, it was just really an amazing show, just a wonderful experience from start to finish.
Cool, man. Well,
Cool.
thanks. Looking forward to this part of the next part of the conversation here on the show
Yeah,
on the episode
absolutely.
here.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for chatting with me. And with that, let's throw it back to Wind Up Weekend and my conversation with Rolf Studer, co-CEO of Oris. We'll talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound. This is the first panel of Windup Watch Fair New York City. It'll also be released as a podcast this coming week. Really happy to be joined by Rolf Studer, co-CEO of Oris, one of our sponsors this year. They're right upstairs. Rolf, how's it going?
Thank you very well. Very glad to be here. Came in yesterday and I feel the energy here at Worn and Wound. It's always a great event.
Yeah, we love having you here. Oris has been obviously a partner of ours in the Wind Up Watch Fair for many years now. I was wondering if before we kind of like get into the conversation and talk a little bit about the big new release this year, if you could just like reflect a little bit on like what Wind Up has meant to you and to Oris, over the course of the last several years. This show feels very kind of like markedly different to me just a few hours in. It's just such a larger scale, I think, than anything we've attempted before.
Well, we have been with you guys in the early days, and we have always been a brand that was driven by the watch community, by watch enthusiasts, and that's the same thing for you. And I think that's how we grew together, basically. And you have gotten bigger, we have gotten bigger, and here we are. And exciting to see how far we have gotten so far, and looking forward to seeing what's up there in the next years.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you again for joining us. Bigger, I think, is the operative word this year. The venue, the scope is just enormous. So you're not a stranger, obviously, to Wind Up and to our podcast listeners, but for folks who might be in attendance or who might be listening and on the podcast, who might not be totally familiar with who you are and how you came to kind of like find your place at Oris. I was wondering if you could kind of give us a little bit of a history of, how you kind of like got into the watch world and Oris specifically, and what's your like kind of like broad view of the brand? Like, kind of if you had to like explain Oris to someone who wasn't familiar with the brand, how would you do that?
Yes, well, I have been with Oris since 2006, and I didn't have a boring day since. We are one of the last independent watch brands out there, and I think that is very important to us. That really makes who we are, not only independent from a group, but independent as a state of mind, independent, free to do what we want to do, to develop the brand in the long term and not having to take short term decisions. Um, Sustainability is very important to us. We are the first mechanical Swiss watch company that has been certified climate neutral. We compensate for our emissions. We reduce our emissions every year. We have sustainability report that I think really makes sense and is very transparent. Yeah, and we are from the Swiss German part of Switzerland, so things must make sense. That's what you see in our product, and I think that's also one of the reasons why the watch community appreciates what we do. Yes, this is Oris.
Yeah, the sustainability thing has been something that we've been tracking obviously for years. It's clearly a very big part of the brand ethos. I love the new box that you guys have that just kind of collapses down into nothing. It's just such a cool design and such a great sort of alternative to the ultra luxurious like mahogany presentation box that the industry has been sort of like addicted to for years.
Yes, and sustainability has been a big topic in our industry over the last few years. At the moment, it's a bit less talked about than it used to be, which doesn't mean that these pressing matters go away. But often I feel also that people um, don't really think it through. It's not the product where you make a difference. It's in the whole surrounding around it. If you think about it, we are a volume producer in this industry, and we make about 15 tons of watches a year. That's the equivalent of 10 cars, right? So, and of those 15 tons, about 5 tons are steel. The CO2, the carbon equivalent to this 5 tons of steel is a business class flight from Zurich to LA and back.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, it's really not in the watch, it's in the lifestyle that our industry has.
Yep.
And to fly people from LA to Switzerland for events, that's where you have to start. But obviously, these people coming to these events, they don't like to write about that so much, and that's maybe
Sure.
one of the reasons why you don't read about this side of the story.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on Oris press trips, and there's no bottled water, on an Oris press trip. You give us a water bottle that's refillable. So like you really do kind of like, live and breathe that sort of that ethos, which is I think very admirable in this industry. Um, So you've released a brand new watch today, the Diver's Date. It's sort of a reinterpretation or a little bit of an update to the Diver 65 line. It's more than that, but that's sort of like the immediate impression is sort of it makes you think of the Diver 65. Before we talk about the new Diver's Date, though, I thought we could kind of like dig in a little bit to the Diver 65 because that to me seems like one of the core like enthusiast watches of the last like 10 or so years. Could you talk about um the conceit behind reintroducing that watch when it was reintroduced and sort of like the history of that and the importance of the Diver 65 and the Oris lineup over the last decade or so?
Yeah, we introduced Diver 65 in 2015, so almost 10 years. And when you think back, so many things have happened in these 10 years. That was at the in the watch industry at the very beginning of the retro trends.
Yep.
So we were with Diver 65, one of the early brands to really um, capture that. And for us, it was somewhat special. At the time, Ulrich Herzog was still our CEO, who bought the company in 1982 together with Dr. Portman from Azuag, and they went through these difficult times of the watch crisis, and he didn't really like to look back so much. They always had to push things to the next level and to try to get out of these difficult times. And then looking back wasn't something that he embraced from the very beginning, but we still did it. And it was an immediate success. It became, as you said, it became an enthusiast favorite, gave us as a brand the possibility to talk about our past, which was really good. And Diver 65 also became a platform for many editions that we did dedicated to the watch community.
Yeah, so many limited editions and collaborations and special editions over the years. It's really, like you said, a canvas for a lot of different things. You mentioned how like 9 or 10 years ago, obviously the watch industry was very different. What are some things you've observed change over the course of the last decade that maybe might inform your thinking about new releases now or going forward? What are some of those shifts that you've seen in the industry?
Well, I think the most important fact certainly was the pandemic. We are in a cyclic industry, so we are used that when things in the world are difficult, that our industry is hit especially hard, and we really prepared for that when the pandemic came, made the ship storm-proof, and then the exact opposite happens, right? People were at home, they had the time to read all these websites up and down. They spent a lot of time with watch content. They educated themselves. I'm sure for you guys it was also a very good time, also unexpectedly, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, we saw the website kind of like grow quite a bit during that period. I think because, as to your point, people were home. They had more kind of like idle time online to pursue their hobbies or interests or just kind of distract themselves from a very kind of like emotionally difficult period of time. And certainly for me personally, like watches have always been kind of like an escape hatch from the pressures of real life. And I think for a lot of people, that really became true during the pandemic for sure.
Yes, and then people couldn't spend money on travel. They couldn't spend money in restaurants. So suddenly they spent their money on watches. Um, and we have seen the effects of that in the last few years. Prices went up. With, well, not just prices went up, also the quality of watches went up because people knew more, so they expected more. And with that, quality of watches rose. Um, but also prices rose to a level that I don't or didn't always feel it was healthy for several reasons. Because I think it's very dangerous if we, as an industry, outprice ourselves from our customer base. If we cater just to the happy few, we will, if this continues, we will become culturally irrelevant. That's one thing. And the other thing is that when prices go up, volumes go down, and the Swiss watch industry loses its industrial base, which is something that we see happen to some extent already, and which I think is very dangerous. And that's also why we at Oris, we really want to keep um, our entry price level to offer a well-made mechanical Oris watch also to a person who must work for their money and who just starts their hobby.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say about kind of like the cultural aspect of it. I think a lot of people maybe like outside the enthusiast or hobbyist realm think of like a Swiss watch as a like a high end luxury item, something that is very ornate or very valuable in some way. But for many decades, Swiss watches were just like high quality watches that anyone could own or aspire to own that weren't necessarily flashy or it was just like it was a designation of something of high quality. Um, and I feel like the affordable price point that Oris kind of sticks at is a sort of a continuation of that tradition of, sort of like you can have a nice Swiss watch that will last you for the rest of your life. It could be your only watch forever. And that's, that could be an Oris for a new customer.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, your point before, I think that's very interesting. Before the quartz time, a watch had to be mechanical, right? And
Sure.
if you
Yeah.
wanted um, to read the time on your wrist, it was with a mechanical watch. And at Oris, we always made mechanical watches at prices that were accessible for the average person.
Yeah.
And with the quartz crisis, obviously that business model was erased because suddenly you had a new technology that um, served that purpose to show the time for a reasonable price, did it more precisely and for less money.
Yep.
So not only the whole industry, also Oris, and I think especially Oris had to reinvent themselves. And as you mentioned, the industry has gone up. The mechanical watch has become a luxury object. And that is, by the way, also why I like so much to be here, because it's so refreshing to see all these brands here, to see people here, to see the community here who truly appreciate mechanical watchmaking. And it's not about the status and it's not about showing off, but about appreciation of what we really do. And this is also how we see ourselves industry, um, in this industry that is exclusive. Um, we see ourselves as the inclusive brands.
Yeah.
To be exclusive, excluder in Latin means to lock people out, right? And basically, it's a very, yeah, it's not a very nice thing to do. And we want to bring people together. We don't want to create envy. We want to share the joy about our watches.
Yeah, no, I mean that's like I think that's maybe why Oris and Wind Up and Warner are such a good partnership because that's really the ethos of company too. It's like no barriers to entry. This is obviously Windup is free to attend. No one paid today to get into Windup. You can just walk in and come as you are, and I think that's really important to to be able to introduce people to these watches without any sort of barrier. Everything's out on the table. You can pick things up. Nothing's under glass. There's some watches under glass, I guess, but for the most part, you can pick things up and try things on. I think that's very, very important for people, especially if they have a preconceived notion of watches as being this sort of like exclusionary, high-end luxury sort of space, because it often is that for a lot of people, at times, but not here. But I think that's important.
Absolutely. And we see that here, and it's so refreshing to have that. So thank you for advocating the thought of inclusive luxury. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of it as well. Um, all right, so let's talk about the diver's date. So the the new watch isn't dramatically different from the Diver 65. It has a handful of small updates and sort of refinements. Can you sort of like take us through some of the changes introduced in the Diver's date and what makes it sort of like a compelling update on the Diver 65?
Yes, we launched Diver 65 in 2015. And since then, now it is an important part of the Oris collection. It's firmly established in the world of Oris. So it was time to update it and to reflect that in the new product. Diver 65 was a reference to the original watch that we launched in 1965. And we wanted to take the watch away from being a reference to some extent and make it not a vintage watch, but more of a classic watch. Still paying tribute to the original, but being more of a watch on its own. And you see that in these details that we changed. Um, the case proportions changed. The top ring is now ceramic, not aluminium anymore as it was in the original. It's 200 meters waterproof, not 100 meters. The case back is open, and you see the red Oris rotor, and it's not closed with the vintage Oris logo on it. We have a quick chain system for the bracelets, and the watch comes with a strap and the bracelets. We have a proprietary font on the dial of the watch now. There are more reflective elements on it, so it stands out a little bit more on your wrist. So a lot of things changed. It's still in the tradition of the original divers. You can see that it came from Diver 65, but it's now a collection on its own.
It's you guys did a really nice job with it. It's like I said, not a lot of dramatic changes, but just enough little subtle changes to make the experience kind of like you know significantly different. And this watch looks just alongside the Diver 65, right? The Diver 65 is still it's not going anywhere. It's part of the collection, right?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, the new divers will at some point take that space,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still here. And yeah, check it out at our booth upstairs. It's really a nice upgrade.
Yeah. It strikes me that the other big release for Oris this year, at least the one that I kind of like think of as the big release for Oris this year, is the refined Oris Aquas, the new Aquas that you guys released at Watches and Wonders, which is sort of similarly not a dramatic change, just a series of like very small tweaks and updates to kind of modernize it, refine it a bit, make it a better experience. It feels like you've taken a similar approach with this watch with the diver's date as it relates to the diver's 65. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important for Oris to do that, to make those incremental changes, those small changes? Because it feels like that's a very different approach than a lot of other brands take, which sort of, in my opinion, kind of like needlessly reinvent watches over and over again, year after year. It feels like you guys have a very different approach.
Yes, we take our product very serious, and I think Aquis and divers show where we are as a company in our journey now. I think we have set our collections, and now we just want to make them better and better and better. And I think it also has to do with our independence.
Mhm.
We are not a company led by managers who need to leave their footprint in the 3 to 5 years they are with the company. As I mentioned before, Ulrich has been with Oris since 1978. I have been with Oris since 2006. Vijay, our CEO here in the US, since 2010. So people spent their lives at this company.
Mhm.
And then you take responsibility, and you take responsibility to make things as good as you can make them and make them better. Take no shortcuts. um, Make the best watch for your customer that you can. And yeah, that's the journey we are on.
Yeah. I imagine this watch has been in the works for a while. Nothing happens overnight in the Swiss watch industry. Can you tell us about any particular like design challenges or production challenges that you ran into during the course of pulling this watch together?
Well, it's always a challenge when you start these projects. You never really know where you're going to end. You have a brief. You want to achieve a few things,
Mhm.
but then it's not clear, are you going to do that? And there are always challenges. Here with Diver 65, we spent a lot of time choosing the colors. We spent a lot of time working on the font. It's small things that you hardly recognize because they are really just small changes, but these small changes do make the difference. We worked a lot on the new indices. If you check the
Yeah.
watch out, you will realize that. So um, it's basically a never-ending process because you are never 100% there. At some point, you just have to say, okay, that's it.
Enough is enough.
We hope it's good enough.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. How'd you land on the case size, the 39 millimeter case size? Obviously, the Diver 65 has existed in a lot of different sizes over the years. Why 39 for the initial Diver State watch?
We thought that this was a good size these days to launch the watch. It has always been a watch that was aimed towards the watch enthusiast. So 39 is a size that we feel fits most people who like watches of a certain size, but not too big. Even though we often get the comments that our watches are almost too small. Maybe this is the only place where people say they are too big, but for a lot of customers, they still want 40, 42, 44. But we think that it is more elegant, it's better on the wrist, and in the long term is a better watch, a little bit smaller.
Yeah, this watch at 44, I feel like would not make a lot of sense. It's sort of that would be very like anachronistic, I think, to have this watch much larger than it is now. I wanted to kind of like bring the conversation back to wind up in the enthusiast community by asking you about your specific relationship with the enthusiast community and how it kind of like sits with like product development and how you might get get feedback from enthusiasts. I imagine obviously Oris has a dedicated base of fans and owners, and you must get commentary from owners frequently and feedback. And I'm wondering how that kind of like winds up in a final product from time to time, or does it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And the watch community has really brought us to the place where we are today. A big step change for us was social media. We have had that following for a long time, but with social media, suddenly watch collecting or being a watch enthusiast became a cool hobby, right?
Hmm.
And all these positive comments on the social networks, they gave us publicity that we could never have bought. And we are close to the community. Um, we want to be an inclusive brand. We want to have this inclusive spirit, and that means that you are on an eye to eye level with people, and that you interact and that you listen. And we are at events like these. We go to enthusiast meetings, not because we have to, but because it's what we love to do,
Sure.
like you, right? And there are watches that come straight out of such conversations. For example, the Cherry Aquis. was something that was requested by the enthusiast community, and then we made it.
Yeah. You mentioned social media. I can't not mention the phenomenon that is the Oris bear and the social media presence that the bear has. He has his own social media profile, of course. The bear's here, right? We have the bears upstairs in the
Of
Oris.
course.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that alone is kind of like has become sort of like a cultural sort of touchstone for Oris, and sort of a way that you guys like interact with the community in a way that other brands don't all the time, I think. I want to open it up to questions from our live audience here. Does anyone have any questions for Rolf on the new diver's date or anything related to Oris?
Yeah, you can
And do
ask
we have
anything.
a mic that we can get into the crowd, or I can come? Any questions?
So I have the Kermit. I love it. Do you have any other fun collaborations planned? Yeah, do you have any other fun collaborations planned? Like with Disney?
Yes, we do. It's always difficult to talk about projects that are not yet released, but there will be this year. There will be a very nice thing that I think people have been waiting for. So quite excited to see that coming towards the end of the year. And there's always a lot of stuff in the pipeline. It's always too bad I can't really talk about it, but I hope you will be excited in December then. Yeah.
It's always worth a shot to ask. I mean, you never know. He might slip up. It's possible. Any other?
That normally happens later in the day. Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? All right. Well, Rolf, thank you again so much for. Oh, did I?
Do you have your own personal favorite Oris watch?
Well, actually, I have many. If I had to choose one, it would maybe be caliber 473. Why is that? Because 473 really close a circle for us at Oris. For decades, we have made the pointer date, small second hand winding movement in high quantities that really defines Oris, was distributed all over the world. And with 473, we brought together these qualities of that old movement, which is point to date, small seconds, hand winding, with what we are able to do today. Caliber 400, 5 days power reserve, anti-magnetic, 10 years warranty, 10 year service intervals, and one of my favorite complications, a power reserve indication on the case back, plus that powder blue dial, which is my favorite color personally. So for me, everything comes together in that watch. I'm sorry for the other ones, but yeah, this is my favorite.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any hands. So again, thank you, Rolf, for taking the time to chat with me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, especially on the day that you've launched a brand new watch. If you haven't checked it out, please go upstairs and check out the new Diver's Date at the Oris booth. And hope everyone enjoys the rest of the show. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Thank you. See you at our booth upstairs.